Most people chase distractions so desperately, they end up living an entire life without ever truly living. Søren Kierkegaard. Now let me ask you, how many days of your life do you actually remember? How many moments were so intense, so vivid, that time itself seemed to stop? And everything burned into your memory like a scar? If your mind has to dig deep, really search, then maybe you already know the answer. And this isn't just poetic philosophy. It's practically a silent diagnosis. A sentence passed on an epidemic that never makes the headlines, but keeps spreading. Quiet, sophisticated, disguised as normal life. Wake up, check your phone, traffic, work, same old routine, come home, Netflix, takeout, an endless scroll to try and fill that emptiness you don't even know how to name. Then repeat, again and again. Funny how familiar that sounds, isn't it? Maybe you notice it, maybe you don't, but there's always this low-key discomfort, a pressure on your chest you've learned to call just being tired, a restlessness that doesn't go away, not with weekends, not with holidays, not even with vacations. And that's the cruelest trick about the comfort zone. It doesn't look like a prison, no walls, no locks, the doors are wide open, and still you don't leave, because it offers little anesthetics, micro doses of relief, and in the middle of it all, life just quietly slips away. Silent, unnoticed, and by the time you realize it, you find yourself looking back, wondering when exactly it all started slipping through your fingers. But there's one thing that never goes away. A voice, small, relentless, a spark that, no matter how suffocated, never fully burns out. And maybe, just maybe, it's that very spark that brought you here. Have you noticed how time feels like it's speeding up? Days just slip away, weeks evaporate, and before you know it, it's Friday. Again and again, like your whole life's been set to autopilot, while you just sit there, half numb, half resigned. And the strangest thing is that this feeling isn't random. There's an entire architecture behind it, a mechanism that keeps turning and keeps you trapped. No chains, no walls, no bars, and yet trapped. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly the cycle you're spinning in right now. Look closely at the patterns. They're everywhere. The alarm goes off. Your body moves before your mind even catches up. The same streets, the same conversations, the same worries, the same little escapes, that extra cup of coffee, that random video, that endless scroll that starts as distraction and ends as anesthesia. It's almost poetic, but a tragic kind of poetry. Because the more you repeat it, the stronger the cycle becomes. The more your brain gets wired to this invisible script, the less room there is for anything new, for risk, for disruption. And suddenly, you realize you're stuck in a perfect loop. Comfortable enough not to rebel. Uncomfortable enough to never feel fulfilled. A prison without bars, where the walls are made of habits, and the guards are your own choices. But here's the part no one tells you. The longer you stay, the harder it is to leave, because the cycle feeds itself. It hands you little hits of relief, just enough to make it seem like everything's fine. But it never lasts, never fills the void. And that's when you start to hear this background noise, something you try to drown out. An uncomfortable question. Was it always supposed to be like this? And maybe, just maybe, it's that very question that starts to weaken the cycle. And right there, right in that moment, is where everything can start to change. There's a silent paradox, as old as human existence itself. The craving for safety, this visceral need for control, for predictability, for stability. But what almost no one realizes is that when this desire gets pushed too far, it becomes a sophisticated trap, a gilded cage, a prison you build yourself, brick by brick, thinking you're protecting yourself. Over 2,000 years ago, Seneca was already warning us. Life, if you're not careful, won't be lived. It'll only be feared. And maybe, without even noticing, that's exactly where you are right now, stuck in that place, that limbo. Think about it. What is safety really? Is it having a stable job, a predictable paycheck, a routine with no surprises? A comfort zone that shields you from risk, from uncertainty, from discomfort? But there's a hidden cost in that equation, and it's way higher than you think. Because in trying to eliminate risk, you also eliminate the possibility of growth. In the desperate effort to avoid failure, you unknowingly give up everything that could have transformed you. And the cruelest part is that this mechanism isn't obvious. It hides. It disguises itself as responsibility, as being prudent, as doing the right thing. But in reality, it works like an invisible leash, keeping you exactly where you are, for years, for decades, sometimes for an entire lifetime. Look around. How many people do you know who are living exactly like this? People who, deep down, have already given up, but never had the courage to admit it, not even to themselves. Who've learned to call maturity what is, in truth, just fear in disguise. And here's the most uncomfortable part. This trap is comfortable. It offers little comforts, small certainties, and that's exactly what makes it so hard to notice, and even harder to break free from. But there's one thing, a crack, something that never fully goes away, a discomfort that, no matter how hard you try to ignore, keeps showing up, in the silence, in the emptiness, in that feeling that creeps in sometimes, when everything seems fine on the outside. But inside, it feels like something's missing, something you can't quite name, and maybe, just maybe, that very crack is the beginning of the way out. At first, it just feels like a phase, a step, something temporary. That job you took just to get stable, that relationship you stayed in because it was convenient, that routine you swore was only temporary, just until things got better. But somehow, things never really get better. The temporary turns permanent, and without even realizing it, you wake up years later, living out a script you never consciously chose, but somehow ended up following. There's this fine line, almost invisible, between stability and stagnation, and it's dangerously easy to cross without even noticing. Because on the surface, everything looks fine. The paycheck clears. The bills get paid. There are just enough distractions to numb the discomfort. But deep down, something starts to grow. This unsettling feeling, a kind of existential weight, like some part of you knows, this isn't it. This was never supposed to be enough. Nietzsche once said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." And maybe that's exactly the problem, the absence of a why. Because when life loses meaning, routine transforms, from a tool into a prison. And the strangest thing is that this prison is comfortable. No bars, no locks, there's a couch, there's Wi-Fi, there's Netflix, there's DoorDash, there's social media to help you pretend everything's fine. And most of the time, it works. It works so well, you almost believe it. Almost. Because every now and then, when the silence hits, when the distractions fail, when the noise of the world isn't loud enough to drown out what's coming from inside, you feel it. A void that nothing fills. A restlessness you can't explain. A question that won't go away. Is this really it? And that's when the cracks start to show. When that once comfortable prison starts revealing its fractures. Because deep down, there's a part of you that never agreed to this script. A part that has always known you were made for more. So much more. And maybe, just maybe, it's that very discomfort that marks the beginning of your freedom. There's a price almost no one ever counts. A cost that doesn't show up on your bank statement, not on your spreadsheets, not in casual conversations. The price of not changing. And the cruelest part is that this price doesn't come all at once. It's not a clear bill, not something obvious or transparent. It creeps in slowly, subtly, silently, invisibly. But it's devastating. It's that exhaustion that never goes away. That weight on your chest you've learned to call just stress. It's the insomnia that shows up no matter how tired you are. It's the anxiety that creeps in, even when, on the surface, everything seems fine. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, once wrote, "When a person cannot find meaning in life, they distract themselves with pleasure." And maybe, without even realizing, that's exactly what you've been doing. Look at your life. How many times have you tried to fill that emptiness with little escapes? Unnecessary shopping, food that doesn't satisfy, shows that don't entertain you anymore, endless scrolling that leads absolutely nowhere. And deep down, do you know what hurts the most? It's not the discomfort itself. It's realizing that day after day you've been becoming a version of yourself that you once swore you'd never be. Someone who settled, who gave in, who accepted a life far smaller than the one you were meant to live. And here's the most brutal truth. Life isn't static, and time doesn't wait. What feels like discomfort today turns into illness tomorrow. What feels like frustration today becomes apathy tomorrow. What starts as a small, quiet dissatisfaction, years from now transforms into regret. And there is nothing, absolutely nothing, heavier than looking back and realizing you lived a life that wasn't yours. That is the price of not changing. And it is always, always far higher than the price of transformation. So here's the real question. How long are you willing to keep paying that bill? Maybe, just maybe, this is the exact point where most people retreat. But it's also the same point where a few decide to wake up. There's a limit, a breaking point, a line that, once crossed, there's no turning back. And the strangest thing is that most people don't even realize when they've reached it. Because collapse doesn't happen overnight. It builds. It stacks up. Quietly. Silently. Day after day. Carl Jung once said, "What you resist persists, and what you do not bring to consciousness returns as fate." And maybe, just maybe, that's the perfect description of what happens inside someone who keeps ignoring their own calling. At first, it's just subtle signs. A strange kind of fatigue, a loss of enthusiasm, a feeling of being disconnected from everything. But over time, that discomfort starts to take shape. It becomes constant irritability. It becomes chronic anxiety. It becomes that insomnia no medication can fix anymore. It becomes that lump in your throat that never really goes away. The body starts saying what the soul has been screaming. Heart palpitations, migraines, stomach issues, muscle tension, symptoms with no clear cause, but they follow you like shadows. And the cruelest part is that the world around you keeps spinning like nothing's wrong. No one notices. No one sees. After all, you're still functioning, right? You're producing. You're delivering. You're smiling on social media. You're telling everyone, I'm fine, but you're not. Inside, a silent implosion is unfolding. And with every day you ignore that inner voice, every day you look away from the cracks, the collapse inches closer. Not from the outside, from the inside, because ignoring your own calling has consequences. It always has. It always will. And the longer you postpone it, the higher the price. Until one day, you look in the mirror, and you don't even recognize the person staring back. The light in your eyes is gone. The ease in your step vanished. Your vitality, now just a distant memory. And maybe, just maybe, this is exactly where you are right now. And if this video found its way to you, maybe that's not an accident. Because there's a kind of pain that doesn't come to destroy. It comes to wake you up. So the question is, will you keep ignoring it? Or will you finally listen? There comes a moment when everything boils down to a single choice: stay or jump. And despite what you've been led to believe, it's not a pretty jump. It's not cinematic. There's no epic soundtrack playing in the background, no guarantees, no safety nets. It's a leap into the dark, into the absolute unknown. And yes, it's terrifying, brutal, almost unbearable. Nietzsche once said, "The snake that cannot shed its skin perishes." And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly where you are right now, where either you change or something inside you starts to die. No exaggeration, no poetry, no sugar-coated metaphors. But here's the part no one ever tells you. Most people never jump. They live right on the edge, staring into the abyss, calculating the risks, imagining what could happen, making endless plans, crafting sophisticated excuses to justify why it's not the right time. But the truth is, it's never going to be the right time. The perfect scenario will never come. There will never be a day when you wake up without fear, without doubt, without discomfort. That day doesn't exist. Because fear isn't a sign that you shouldn't jump. It's just proof that you're standing exactly at the edge of your comfort zone, right at the border between who you are and who you could become. And here's the most brutal truth of all. The void is not the enemy. The void is the portal. It's the space where everything can be rebuilt, where everything that once kept you trapped stops making sense, where you stop being a prisoner and finally become the author of your own life. But only those who dare to jump ever discover this. Only those willing to let go of false certainties in exchange for real possibilities. Only those who understand that the pain of the jump is infinitely smaller than the pain of staying. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly why this message found its way to you right now. Because deep down, you already know. You already know you can't stay here anymore. You already know the price of staying has become greater than the fear of leaving. So the question is, how much longer are you going to ignore it? There's an illusion, deeply rooted in the modern mind. The illusion of safety. The belief that if you control every variable, if you follow the script, if you do everything right, you'll be protected, immune, shielded from chaos. But here's a truth no one likes to hear, though deep down you already know it. Safety doesn't exist. At least, not in the way they sold it to you. The job that feels rock solid today could be gone tomorrow. The stable company could collapse. Your health could fail. Relationships can fall apart. The world changes. It always has. It always will. And right here, right in this uncomfortable truth, is where one of the greatest traps of modern life hides: the desperate attempt to build castles on quicksand, to chase stability in a world that, by nature, is movement, is uncertainty, is constant transformation. Seneca once said, "The only thing that's stable is change." And maybe, just maybe, the only real safety that exists is you, your ability to adapt, to reinvent yourself, to move through chaos without breaking. Think about it. What's really safer? Betting everything on a job, a system, a pre-written script? Or becoming the kind of person who, no matter what happens out there, knows they can rebuild themselves as many times as life demands? That is the only true safety. It isn't external. It's internal. It's not in the circumstances. It's in your ability to navigate them. It's in your willingness to learn, to grow, to turn discomfort into a classroom, and chaos into a laboratory. But it comes with a price. It demands detachment, courage, the humility to admit that, yes, control is an illusion, but, paradoxically, that's not a reason to panic. It's a reason to feel free. Because when you finally understand this, when you stop fighting the inevitable, something shifts. Anxiety starts to lose its grip. Fear begins to shrink. And in place of that heavy weight comes a strange lightness. The lightness of someone who finally realizes they don't have to pretend to control the uncontrollable anymore. And maybe, just maybe, this is exactly where your real freedom begins. There's a silent, relentless law that governs everything, and no matter how hard you try to ignore it, it keeps operating. The law of impermanence, of movement, of inevitable transformation. And here's an uncomfortable truth. If you don't change by choice, life will change you through pain. At first, it's just small signals, a subtle discomfort, constant irritation, that emptiness that creeps in now and then, but you always manage to shove it under the rug with some distraction. And it works. For a while, it always works. Until it doesn't. Because what you refuse to deal with, life deals with for you. What you won't confront, it forces you to face. Through an emotional breakdown, a sudden layoff, a financial crisis, a breakup you swore would never happen. Or maybe it's just that morning when you wake up and realize you don't even recognize yourself anymore. Nietzsche wrote, "Life is hard on those who refuse to be hard on themselves." And maybe that's exactly the point. Life doesn't punish. It responds. It responds to your neglect, to your avoidance, to your refusal to grow, to change, to take responsibility for your own existence. And here's the most brutal part. Most people only move when the pain of staying becomes greater than the fear of changing. Until then, they stay on autopilot, stuck in the cycle, trapped in the illusion that somehow things will magically fix themselves. But they won't. Because life has a very specific way of teaching you the lessons you refuse to learn. And the more you resist, the harder it pushes. The more it breaks you down. The more it corners you, with nowhere left to hide. And right there, that's where the crossroads appears. Either you allow yourself to break so you can rebuild, or you keep forcing it until there's nothing left to hold together. No more excuses, no more illusions, no more false sense of safety. And maybe, just maybe. That's exactly what you're feeling right now. Life calling you, and this time, maybe ignoring it, is no longer an option. There comes a point where pretending just isn't an option anymore, where the discomfort becomes so constant, so present, that ignoring it stops being possible. It's like life itself starts whispering or screaming that you can't keep hiding from yourself. Maybe that's exactly where you are right now, a place that's uncomfortable, unsettling, but deeply revealing. Because behind all that discomfort, there's an invitation. Not just any invitation. An unrefusable one. A calling. A calling toward something you've always known deep down was there. A life that no longer fits inside the cramped mold of your comfort zone. A path that can't be ignored anymore. Kierkegaard once said, "Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom." And maybe that tightness in your chest, that restlessness that won't go away, isn't a problem. Maybe it's the exact signal that, for the first time, you're standing face to face with the real possibility of actually living. For real. No anesthesia, no excuses, no running. And at this point, it all comes down to one question. Are you going to answer the call? Because yes, it's scary. It's uncomfortable. It's uncertain. But you know what's even scarier? Looking back 10, 20, 30 years from now, and realizing you knew. You felt it. You heard this call, and still, you chose to ignore it. That is the real tragedy. But right here, this is also where your greatest chance lives. Because if this hurts, if this unsettles you, it means you're still alive. It means that, despite everything, there's still something inside you that's never fully gone out. And now, it's asking, it's demanding, it's requiring more presence, more truth, more life. The choice was never life's, never fate's, never chance's. It's always been yours. And the question echoing now isn't whether you're brave enough. The question is, if not now, then when?